It's nearly 3 in the morning. The house is silent, except for this little recorder humming beside me on the nightstand. I bought it at the drugstore weeks ago. Thought maybe if I spoke into it, the silence wouldn't feel so heavy. I'm 68 years old, a widow, a mother. At least, I still think of myself that way, even if my son has become someone I don't recognize anymore. People tell you grief comes after the funeral, that it arrives in waves, that time teaches you to swim. Maybe that's true for some. But for me, the grief didn't drown me until last week, until the day I hid in the back seat of my son's car, clutching Frank's old watch like a fool. I thought I was planning a surprise. Something small. Something to make him laugh again. But what I saw when those car doors opened has left me wondering what family truly means. And maybe, by the time I finish speaking all this, you'll wonder too. The leather was cold against my cheek. Too cold. Funny how you notice things like that at the exact moment when your world tilts sideways. My breath caught the second I pressed myself down onto that back seat, heart hammering like a child playing hide-and-seek for the first time. I meant it as a silly gesture, 68 years old, hiding in my son's Camry like a fool with arthritic knees bent tighter than they ought to bend. It was supposed to be joy. A birthday surprise. Just me popping out, saying something ridiculous like, "Gotcha." Maybe laughing with him the way Frank used to laugh at my little pranks. How many times had we done those surprises? When Danny was 7, I hid behind his bedroom door with a balloon. When he was 13, I popped confetti into his face on his birthday morning. When he turned 21, I barged into his dorm room carrying a cake he was far too embarrassed for his friends to see. 43 years with Frank, 39 of them raising Danny, and somewhere in me I thought even this late in life I could still conjure laughter from him. Instead, I lay frozen, cheek absorbing the chill of leather that Frank himself had once helped Danny pick out when he bought the car. I can still hear Frank's voice teasing, "You'll scratch this with your belt buckle the first week," and Danny laughing, proud of his first new vehicle. Now Frank's laughter was gone, and mine had turned into shallow breaths, heart stuck in my throat. The garage carried its usual smells: motor oil, grass clippings, a faint bite of gasoline. Safe smells. Familiar smells. I checked my Timex watch. 12:47. Frank gave me that watch for our 40th anniversary. A simple silver band, nothing fancy, but he said, "Now you'll carry the minutes I can't give back to you." I'd worn it ever since. I don't know why I thought crouching in that back seat was clever. My hip had protested the whole climb in, stiff as a rusted hinge. I clutched the leather and told myself it was worth it, that when Danny started the car and I popped up smiling, he'd laugh, really laugh. I wanted that sound back so badly, the kind that fills a house even when silence has become its regular tenant. Then I heard the slam of the car door, not one, two. At first there were only footsteps, muffled voices outside. A woman's laugh, quiet and uncertain. Then Danny's voice, lower, tighter than usual. "She understand." Eventually, that was the first chill across my skin, not from the leather this time, but from something I couldn't yet name. Then the other door opened. The woman slid into the passenger seat. I pressed myself lower, heart rattling against my ribs. I don't know what instinct told me to hide even further instead of announcing myself, but something deep in the bones decides before the brain can catch up. Her hair was darker than memory, streaked with threads of silver at the temples, but familiar. So familiar it made me dizzy. I told myself I was imagining. Told myself grief was pulling tricks again. But then she turned, looking at Danny as he adjusted the wheel. Linda Morrison. And I swear, the world cracked quietly at that exact second. Linda, who once stood in my kitchen kneading pie crust at Thanksgiving, flour dusting her sweater as she laughed about her own husband's terrible jokes. Linda, who shared slips of handwritten recipes with me at birthdays, who helped plan Sharon's baby shower when she was glowing with my first grandchild. Linda, whose grandchildren call me Grandma Ellie, and called her Grandma Linda like we were two halves of the same safe circle. Linda, who should have remained untouchable, sacred, now she sat in my son's front seat, her hand brushing his in a way that didn't belong. A sound escaped me, barely a gasp, but enough. Danny's eyes snapped to the rearview mirror, and I saw it, the exact moment his blood drained white. "Mom?" he whispered. Linda's eyes closed, her lips moving like a prayer slipping loose. "Oh, Danny." Oh no. I wanted to say 1,000 things, but none fit. My throat was rubble. My chest a lockbox I couldn't open. I should have laughed, risen from the back seat, done what I planned, yelled, "Surprise, happy birthday!" But no laughter came, only the leather pressing colder against my cheek, the realization of betrayal pulling heavy as stones in my stomach. Do you know the difference between confusion and clarity? I do now. Confusion is when you misplace your glasses or forget a grocery item. Clarity is watching two people you once trusted, the child you raised and the woman you once called family, look at each other with forbidden tenderness. Clarity is realizing you are blind until the very second you wish you hadn't seen at all. The seconds lasted hours in that car. Linda didn't turn fully around to face me. She kept her eyes on the dashboard, the veins at her temple pulsing. Danny's breaths came fast, shallow. I knew that sound from when he was a boy, caught doing something wrong. Except this was no broken lamp, no bad grade hidden in a backpack. This was different. This was irreparable. "Mom." He started, his voice breaking into a boy's again, but no words followed. "And me?" I held onto Frank's watch, the minutes ticking louder than the silence, and knew in that precise second, nothing about family, about love, about safety would ever feel permanent again. That's the thing no one tells you about betrayal. The pain isn't in the moment you discover the truth. It's in the avalanche of memory that follows. Every Thanksgiving apron, every pie shared, every picture taken at Christmas with both grandmothers beside the tree, it all rewrites itself instantly, like photographs catching flame. That all happened in less than 5 minutes in Danny's car. But those minutes stretched still, hours later, days later. Tonight at 2:54 a.m. yes, I turned into this tiny little cassette recorder, still shaking. I meant it as a silly surprise. Instead, the joke was on me. Because who hides in their son's car expecting balloons and finds their world cracking open instead? The house feels too large now. Too empty in the places I can't fill, and the worst part isn't the silence itself. It's the reminders tucked in every corner, little landmines scattered through time. All it takes is a chair, a mug, the squeak of a floorboard, and there's Frank haunting me in the softest ways. Take his chair, for instance. Second one from the left at the kitchen table. It still leans a bit backward, slightly uneven, because he always rocked on it like a boy and stretched the joints loose. I keep telling myself to tighten the screws, to wedge something under the leg, but then I think, what's the point? No one else ever sits there. I don't even set a plate at that place anymore, though for months I did. Every Tuesday, I made pot roast. My pot roast potatoes, carrots, just enough time to perfume the whole house. 43 years I made that dish for him. The Tuesday after the funeral, I still set out 2 plates. Automatically, like my body didn't know yet that one had gone cold for good. The routine was a comfort at first, though Margaret, my daughter, started looking at me then the way people look at toddlers carrying scissors. Careful, alarmed. "Mom, you don't have to do this." Always spoken gently, like she didn't want to spook me, but I did it anyway, because what else was I supposed to do? Pretend 43 years of habits disappear neatly into grief counseling pamphlets and casseroles from neighbors. His coffee mug still sits in the cupboard. The blue one, chipped on the handle from the Christmas when he dropped it. He'd insisted on keeping it, running his thumb over the crack every morning, as if the rough edge proved something about endurance. "It's got character," he'd say, flashing me that boyish grin. "Now it just has dust." I dust around it, never daring to throw it out. Throwing it out would feel like throwing away his voice. Throwing away his thumbprint still etched in invisible oils across the porcelain. Then there are the slippers. Lord, the slippers. Brown leather ones with the sheepskin lining worn down by years of shuffling across these linoleum floors. They sat by the bed for weeks afterward, turned in slightly like his feet were still inside them. One morning, without thinking, I bent down and pressed my cheek to them, inhaling. The smell of soap, faint, sweat, and leather stronger than any perfume I've worn in my life. I didn't even realize I'd started crying until the damp spread across the worn lining. After Frank died, Danny came more often. My boy, my only boy. He mowed the lawn, though I'd already paid Thomas Henderson down the road. Fixed leaky faucets that didn't really drip. He said, "Mom, you need us now," and at first, I believed it. It felt like the old days. Him back at his father's chair, long legs folded awkwardly under the table, blowing on soup like a child again. But it never looked right. He wasn't Frank, never could be. I caught Danny humming sometimes, thinking I wouldn't notice. The same old songs Frank used to whistle, shaving hymns, big band numbers, scraps of Sinatra. He hummed them without words, distracted, thumb scrolling his phone. And I let myself believe it was healing, his way of carrying his father forward. But now I wonder, was it healing, or was it distraction? Was it a tune meant for someone else, sitting on the other end of a phone call when he left early? For Linda, the thought tastes sour even as I speak it. It's funny how betrayal reaches backward. I look at every Sunday dinner since Frank died, every time my son's eyes shone at a secret message, or when he stood too quickly to answer a call in the hall. And now I see her reflection in all of it. Her hand stirring the soup in my memory. Her laughter tucked in the spaces where I thought Frank's ghost was still hovering. The betrayal poisons even older years, the good ones. How many evenings did Linda and I sit side by side, planning birthday parties for Sharon's children? How many times did she nudge me at the school play, proud tears in both our eyes as Danny and Sharon's little ones sang off key? We called each other family without flinching. Hell, the children called us sisters half in jest, Grandma Ellie and Grandma Linda, like we were bookends holding their little lives together, and it's true. Linda was woven into almost every memory of Sharon and Danny's merry life. First steps, birthday cakes, anniversaries around this very table. And maybe that's why it feels like the chair is so much emptier now. Because it isn't just Frank who is missing from this house, it is everything I thought unshakable about family. Some evenings I still wander into the garden because the silence inside feels too heavy for my bones. The roses Frank planted bloom stubborn each spring no matter how much I neglect them. Yellow along the gate, red by the porch. Frank, see how grief tangles even my tongue after months. Used to tease, stubborn as you, those roses. Now their sweetness makes my stomach turn. I can't look at yellow roses without thinking of the day Linda carried a bouquet of them to Sharon as bridal shower, hugging me in my kitchen as if she were part of the blessing. It's as if she's stolen even the flowers. At night when silence stretches across the house, I lie awake with the clock ticking too loud. I find myself filling that silence with Danny's voice at different ages, asking me for milk, for help with homework, for advice before the prom. I hear Sharon laughing in the living room, Linda and I whispering in the kitchen as young mothers do. But sometimes those voices slip and transpose. And I hear Danny whispering not to me but to her. Whispering that he loves her. Whispering that Mom will understand one day. That's what emptiness does. It doesn't just leave a chair vacant at the table. It rewrites every conversation, retrofits every smile into a deception. I often wonder what Frank would say if he'd be calmer, gentler about this. He always had a way of steadying me when storm clouds gathered. Weather's changing, Ellie, he'd say, joints aching as he looked toward the horizon. He usually meant rain. But sometimes, I think he meant something else, winds that would never blow fair again. Well, the weather's changed. And the chair across from me stays bare, no matter how many times I still glance at it out of habit. There are moments in a mother's life when she should know, should see what's right in front of her. And yet, love blinds you, thick and smoky, until everything looks normal through the haze. That was me, blind as a bat, clutching my son's every smile as if it were proof he was healing. It began about 6 months ago, though at the time I told myself not to fuss. Danny would come for dinner every Sunday, like clockwork. He'd help himself to Frank's chair, too tall for the table, but somehow smaller than his father had ever seemed. At first, I was grateful. Grateful he came back every week, grateful I wasn't alone with the walls closing in on me. We'd sit across from each other, me pushing food around my plate more than eating, him scrolling on his phone between bites. Ordinary, comforting, in a way. Except it wasn't ordinary, not really. At first, it was little things. The way his phone would buzz at the table and he'd tilt it away from me, shielding the glow. His eyes would flicker across the screen, then soften soft the way they hadn't looked in years, like a boy seeing spring after too long a winter. I'd recognize that smile anywhere. It was the smile of someone who's being seen. But when I asked, he only laughed too quickly. "It's nothing, Mom. Just work." Work? What kind of investment firm sends hearts in text bubbles? Sometimes, when I pressed, he'd blush. And not just a faint coloring either. I mean full red up his neck, his ears, the way he used to flush at 12 when I caught him hiding baseball cards in his homework folder. That should have been my clue. But instead, I took it as hope. My son smiling, blushing again. After the hollow year Sharon left him for someone new, someone polished and sun-soaked in Phoenix. I told myself, let it be. He deserves this. He can have secrets if it means joy returns to his face. I tried to fill the gaps by guessing. Maybe he'd met someone new at church. Or an old friend from college had come back into town. Each possibility warmed me until the chill of silence always crept in after. If it were that innocent, why wouldn't he just tell me? One Sunday I teased him gently. "You're seeing someone," I said, raising an eyebrow as he tucked his napkin into his lap. That boyish laugh of his rang out too loud, too forced. "It's complicated, Mom." He wouldn't meet my eyes, fiddled with his spoon like a nervous schoolboy. Complicated. The word rattled around in my head the rest of that night. You see, everything seems complicated when you're 43 and divorced. His ex, Sharon, had left him after years of exhaustion, I suppose. I had warned them in hints that love can't hold steady if two people stop rowing the boat together. But my warnings were as useful as dust. When she finally told him she was moving to Phoenix with her new husband, some real estate man with teeth whiter than porcelain, something in Danny collapsed. He grew thin in the months after. Stopped shaving properly, lived on frozen dinners and coffee. Called me at odd hours, sometimes in the middle of the night, just for company. "Just wanted to hear your voice, Mom," he'd say. And my heart would break and heal in the same instant. He was still my boy, still needed me. So when I noticed the humming start again, those small habits of his father returning to his lips, I thought, he's finally mending. He's remembering how to be alive. He'd cradle his coffee 2 spoons of sugar, same as Frank, and hum the songs Frank whistled shaving in the mirror. Now, when I look back, I wonder, who was he humming for? It was never me. And now I realize it wasn't Frank either. Some evenings, he'd leave earlier than usual. At first, excuses. Got to get ahead on Monday's reports. Or, the kids' schedules are crazy this week, Mom. Need to sort things out. I nod and smile, push extra food into containers for him to take. But I noticed the way he smoothed his hair before standing, the way he checked his reflection in a darkened kitchen window, tightening his tie like he was going on a first date. He was glowing in ways grief shouldn't allow so soon. Like someone had lit a candle behind his ribs. And I, foolish me, I convinced myself that perhaps the universe had sent him an angel. A kind-hearted woman who could patch the holes Sharon had punctured. The problem wasn't the joy. It was the secrecy that shadowed it. He never offered a name, never said she. Not once. Instead, "It's nothing, Mom," or "Maybe I'll tell you when it's settled." Settled. That word slashed me quietly, though I ignored it at the time. Since when would my son, the boy who used to splatter every detail of his life across my evenings like paint, only be comfortable revealing himself when things are settled? Love unshared becomes suspicion. Doubt crept into my heart like a moth gnawing cloth. Even when I wanted sunshine, all I found were holes. I remember one particular Sunday in spring. The roses were blooming yellow along the gate, stubborn as ever. Danny sat across from me at the table, phone buzzing yet again. He looked at it, laughed softly to himself, then immediately tucked it away. When I asked, "What's funny?" he shook his head. Nothing important, but his grin lingered, ears pinked under his new haircut. I teased him again then. "Got yourself a sweetheart?" He looked me right in the eye that time and smiled. But it was the kind of smile that dodges truth instead of delivering it. And I swallowed down the pressing questions. I told myself, don't ruin it. Let the boy have his secrets. I never imagined how dirty those secrets would feel once revealed. The visits grew shorter. The excuses grew longer. One Sunday, he canceled altogether, claiming a project at work. I believed him. I wanted to. But a week later, when he showed up with that same tuned-up glow, skin fresher, hair combed sharp, shoes polished work, didn't make a man look that alive. Love did, but love from whom? The hindsight burns now. Every moment of denial replayed like a loop, reminding me what I ignored. Even Sharon noticed once, though from a distance. She called me in April, voice sharp as a blade. "You notice he's different too, right? He's hiding something, Eleanor. Watch him." I should have asked more right then. But I laughed it off. "He's smiling again, Sharon. That's all that matters." I was wrong. So wrong. Because what Sharon's mother, what Linda Morrison gave him wasn't healing. It was hunger disguised as hope. And what I dismissed as complicated glances at his phone was the beginning of the end of everything I thought a family was supposed to be. Now, when I remember Danny tilting his face at the dinner table, whispering into his phone, lips curved in joy, I no longer wonder. I know. He wasn't smiling at a joke or a work text, or even remembering his father through a song. He was smiling for her. And all my blindness, the Sunday dinners, the ignored hints, the excuses I swallowed, brought me here. Talking into this recorder at 3 in the morning like some broken-hearted teenager, only I carry 68 years of memories on my back. They call hindsight 20/20ths. I call it cruelty. It's strange, really, the way a single moment can split your life into before and after. Before, I was just a tired widow trying to survive Tuesdays without roast and mornings without the paper crinkle. After, everything was rewritten by the sight of a familiar face in the wrong place. That Sunday morning, I woke early. Too early. I told myself it was Frank's watch taking me awake, his gift on our 40th anniversary, but in reality, it was nerves. A flutter like a schoolgirl plotting a prank. My boy's birthday, 43 years old. He deserved a laugh. He deserved something light. The plan was ridiculous, I admit it now. Hiding in his Camry like a teenager, clutching the spare key he'd given me after Frank died. He said back then, "Just in case, Mom." I never thought "in case" would mean crouching behind his driver's seat, grandchild-level antics on arthritic knees. The garage smelled just like it always did: oil, cut grass, the faint tang of gasoline from the mower. Safe smells. The kind of smells that trick you into thinking everything is ordinary. I checked my Timex, 12:47. The church service would be over by 1. Soon, I clap a hand to his shoulder, shout surprise, and roll my eyes at his exasperated laugh. I could almost hear Frank's chuckle at the thought. "Ellie, you'll give the boy a heart attack," he'd say, pleased despite himself. The car door slammed, then another, not just Danny's footsteps. 2 sets. I froze, cheek pressed harder into the leather. My hip throbbed with the position, but even that familiar ache was drowned out by the sound of another voice. A woman's. Are you sure about this? She asked, timid, worried. Danny's reply was low, tight. She understand, eventually. Understand? My breath hitched. Who was she? Why hadn't he said a word to me? The passenger door opened. I caught a glimpse through the gap in the seats as she climbed inside. Dark hair streaked with silver, profile familiar, achingly familiar. I told myself it was a trick of the light. That grief was distorting her features. That surely God wasn't cruel enough to show me her. Then she turned. Turned with that same face I seen across my table at Christmas, that same laugh I shared beside ovens full of pies. Linda Morrison. My daughter-in-law's mother. My grandchildren's other grandmother. For a second, time stopped. The roses Frank planted might as well have shriveled in their soil. Every birthday party, every baptism, every holiday flashed through my mind, me on one side of the tablecloth, Linda on the other, united as family. Now I was staring at her hand brushing against my son's. A sound tore out of my throat, not even a word, just air stabbed with disbelief. Danny's eyes flicked up to the rearview mirror. I watched the blood drain from his face like a snapped pipeline. Mom? His voice cracked into a child's again, the way it used to when he came home with a broken window story tucked behind his teeth. Linda's face shifted too, her eyes squeezed shut, lips parting like she was whispering a prayer. Oh, Danny, oh no! The words cut sharper than if she'd screamed. I pushed myself upright, every joint screaming, heart louder than the ticking watch on my wrist. The car was suddenly too small, its air thick with betrayal. We pulled to the curb. My dignity cracked across the asphalt as I climbed out, clutching at the doorframe to steady my shaking legs. Danny followed, stammering. Linda stayed in the seat, arms wrapped tight around herself, like if she held her bones hard enough she could disappear. How long? I asked. My voice was high, reedy, hardly my own. Danny's hand went to his temple, dragging down his face. 8 months. 8 months. 8 months while I set out 2 plates, waiting for a husband who would never return. 8 months while I woke at 3 in the morning to clutch slippers that smelled faintly of him. 8 months while Linda smiled at me over potluck desserts, carrying a secret pressed between her teeth. I must have swayed because the curb wobbled under my feet. My knees nearly buckled. That's when the betrayal took physical form. My body knew before my mind did that it couldn't to carry this weight without shaking. My voice shook now, every syllable scraping. She's 23 years older than you. Danny's eyes searched mine, desperate. Mom love doesn't care about age. She's Sharon's mother. The words burst out, louder than I intended. A dog walker across the street stopped, turned. Shame burned my skin, but anger blazed hotter. Your ex-wife's mother. The grandmother of your children. The title reverberated in the air, grandmother, something sacred, untouchable. But now shattered. Linda stepped out then, pale in the sunlight, voice careful. Eleanor, listen to me. We didn't plan this. We didn't want it to happen. I turned, God help me, I turned on the woman I once called sister. How could you? After 20 years of birthdays, after wedding showers, after holidays spent in this house. Your own daughter, your grandchildren, what would they say? What do I say? Danny stepped closer, his hand hovering inches from my arm, like he wanted to soothe me but knew not to. It's complicated, Mom, but I love her. I do, and she loves me. Isn't that enough? Enough? The word rattled in my skull like a pebble in a tin can. Love isn't enough when it eats through the foundation of family. Love isn't enough when it rewrites every photograph in the album into something obscene. Love isn't enough when your grandchildren's bedtime stories end with their father and grandmother under the same roof for the wrong reasons. I shook my head, unable to form more words. All I could manage was the long, quiet distance of my feet carrying me away. 3 miles home, shoes pinching, body aching, dignity in tatters. Danny begged from the car window, please, broken, voice hoarse. Mom, please, I didn't want you to find out like this, please, please. I didn't look back. Because if I did, if I gave them 1 ounce of grace in that moment, I might have shattered right there on the pavement. Instead, I clutched Frank's watch tighter, each tick another step, another block, another mile of disbelief. And as I walked, only one thought burned steadily through all the noise. It would have been kinder if they locked me out of my own home, like those security guards at the wedding stories I've heard. It would have been kinder if they called me confused, or told me gently that I didn't remember. No. This was worse. Because here there was no denial left, only discovery. And the hands I once trusted to clap mine across a dinner table were the same hands undoing everything that made us family. There are arguments that come loud and fast, doors slammed, voices cracked, rage crackling like static in the air. This wasn't one of them. No, this was worse. This was quiet, tidy, so rational it made me feel like the mad one. We stood by the curb after I stumbled out of the car. My hip ached with every ounce of dignity I tried to summon. Danny hovered near, hand half extended, like he wanted to steady me, but his fingers never landed. I realized then how far the distance had already stretched between us. How long? I'd asked, still trembling. 8 months. His voice was low, resigned, as though he were confessing to a teacher. 8 months. Long enough for secrets to harden into something resembling permanence. Long enough to transform denial into a routine. I pressed my palm against the car's roof for balance, the metal hot from the sun. Linda finally stepped out, smoothing her skirt, her eyes trained on the pavement. Her voice was faint, careful. Eleanor. I know this is shocking. Shocking. As though I found out he preferred vanilla ice cream over chocolate. The understatement was so grotesque I almost laughed. Danny, though, tried to meet my eyes. Mom, you always told me I deserved happiness. After Sharon, he broke off, inhaled sharply. Well, I found it. I found someone who understands me. My mind thrashed against his words, desperately trying to push them away. I had always said that. You deserve happiness, son. You'll get through this. I'd whispered it when Sharon left. I'd repeated it when I saw him alone at church pews. But never did I mean this. She's 23 years older than you. My voice was brittle. Danny swiped a hand through his hair, just like he used to when embarrassed as a boy. Age doesn't matter, Mom. Love doesn't carry numbers. I wanted to scream that it mattered when it was her. That love was rotten when it braided across generations, when it rewrote kinship into obscenity. Instead, my throat locked. She's Sharon's mother. Each syllable tore. The grandmother of your children. Do you even hear yourself? His gaze dropped then, shame flickering across his features. But Linda spoke before he could answer. Her voice was calm, almost maternal. That steadiness she'd always worn at family dinners when the children bickered over toys. Eleanor, no one asks for this. It just happened. And it's real. I know it will take time, but someday, she swallowed. Someday you'll accept it. Accept. There it was again. That word delivered like it was inevitable, like refusal was childish. Accept. As if love and betrayal shared the same table and I was the rude guest unwilling to sit. Something inside me cracked further, not with noise but with silence. My hands were trembling too badly to hide. Danny glanced at them. Mom, please. Don't be angry. You'll feel differently once you see how happy I am. His eyes begged me, the way they begged when he was 5 and broke the vase tossing a ball inside. His mouth formed the same apology in waiting. But he was a grown man now, and the apology was meant to soften my resistance, not to admit any real wrong. I saw him at 10 again, teary over a failed math test, telling me I tried my best. Saw him at 20, pleading for money to cover his tuition shortfall, ashamed but hopeful. Now those same wide eyes were harnessed to this farce. You're asking me to bless a union that feels obscene, I whispered. I'm asking you to let me live. His jaw tightened. Linda placed her hand lightly on his shoulder. The gesture twisted my stomach. A mother's touch corrupted into something else. She looked at me with pity, actual pity. Eleanor, grief makes everything look harsher. You've been so lonely. That makes it harder to see clearly. We never wanted this to hurt you. There it was. The soft knife, suggesting I was clouded, fragile, too broken by Frank's absence to see clearly. Don't patronize me, I hissed. My voice quavered, but the steel surprised even me. I know what I see, but she only tilted her head, lips pressed together as though I were a child mid-tantrum. Danny stepped closer, lowering his voice. Mom, whatever you're feeling right now, we'll get through it. Families adjust. They always do. What matters is, I found love again after all the pain. Someday, you'll be grateful I wasn't alone forever. Grateful. The wind picked up then, rustling the trees above the curb. A dog barked in the distance. Life elsewhere, normal elsewhere. But here I stood surrounded by words polished to sound reasonable, while my world was upended. Linda looked me dead in the eye then. Eleanor, try to think of it this way. We've both lost so much, maybe this is a way of healing together. Healing. The hijacking of that word almost doubled me over. Healing wasn't this. Healing wasn't rewriting family trees into mazes no child should have to climb. Healing wasn't betrayal disguised as compassion. My knees threatened to buckle. For a moment, pride alone kept me upright. I can't listen to this, I whispered finally. Danny reached out at last, fingertips grazing my forearm. Mom, please, I jerked away. That broke him. I saw his shoulders sag, the flush creep up his neck, anger prickled in his eyes now, and desperation. If you love me, you'll try. That's all I'm asking. No. My voice came steady then, thin but sharp as glass. If you loved me, you'd have remembered lines that should never be crossed. Silence fell like lead. He opened his mouth, but words failed him. Linda pressed closer into his side instinctively, as though shielding him from the monster I had suddenly become in her eyes. I turned, and I walked. Pain clawed through my hip, my shoes biting into my feet, but it felt better than staying. Because staying meant swallowing the lie, letting their calm, poisoned voices turn me into the confused, grieving fool they wanted to believe I was. Each step was a declaration. No, I won't excuse this. No, won't rewrite what mother and son mean. No, I won't let acceptance erase betrayal. They called after me, soft pleas at first, then Danny's voice hardening. You'll regret this, Mom. Someday you'll regret choosing pride over me. I did not turn. Because regret was already twisting inside me like a thorn. But it wasn't from pride. It was from a son who once needed me to bandage his knees and never realized how badly he de-skinned my heart now. It's 3 a.m. again. Always 3, isn't it? As if grief prefers the witching hour when the silence is loudest and sleep refuses to claim me. The recorder's little red light blinks steady by the bed, patient. Waiting to catch the words, I can't stop turning over. I sit at the kitchen table now, a cup of tea cooling between my palms. Not Frank's mug. I still can't bear it. Tonight it's the plain white one again. Blank, unremarkable. Easier to start over with something that remembers nothing. Outside, Frank's roses sway in the dark. Yellow blooms by the gate, red by the porch. Symbols of our stubbornness, his love planted into earth. They've survived long summers, harsh winters, my neglect. They still bloom, no matter how the house falls into ruin. The roses know only life. They don't care who walks by or who dares corrupt the soil. Maybe I envy them. What a ridiculous thought. A 71-year-old widow jealous of her own roses because they grow without breaking. I think often about that walk home, my feet carrying me those 3 miles after I stepped out of Danny's car. How humiliation burned my skin while strangers watched. How my son pleaded from behind glass. How Linda's silence clung to the passenger seat like guilt given human form. But mostly I think about the choice. Each step home was a choice. To keep walking. To not get in, not swallow their words and pretend it was fine. Every street corner was another chance to give in, to climb back inside to accept. I didn't. And maybe that's the only power left to me in the wreckage, the power to walk away. Since then, the world has pressed at me with its demands. The phone rings. The machine blinks, though I keep it unplugged more often than not. Danny's voice on recording. Mom, please, it's love. Don't do this to me. Don't do this to us. Linda's measured calm. Eleanor, we didn't choose this, but it chose us. Sharon's tight, confused voicemail. What's going on? Mom's not answering me. Danny won't look me in the eye. Please call me back. I can't. Not yet. How can a sister comfort another while knives are still sticking out of both their backs? Some evenings, I wander room to room like a ghost in my own home. I touch Frank's slippers, his chair, his shirts still folded in the closet. They remind me of a world where betrayal wasn't crouched in the front seat of my son's car. A world where family at least meant trust. Now, that word feels broken. Family, the children, oh God, the children. They remain fragile threads caught in the maelstrom. They deserve clarity, not confusion. Someday they'll ask, Daddy, why do you look at Grandma Linda that way? Why does she stay overnight? And what answer will they be given? That love makes everything permissible. That boundaries don't matter if you call it happiness? That thought knots my gut. Because children remember. Children carry dysfunction like hand-me-downs. And I can already see their drawings at school. Family trees snarled where branches twist into roots that never should have met. I gripped the counter one night and whispered to Frank, this would have broken you too, wouldn't it? I half expected silence and got it. But sometimes silence is louder than any comfort. Society says love is enough, that it excuses all things, crosses all barriers. But I know better. Love without boundaries is just hunger. Hunger devours. Hunger consumes. And in the end, it leaves nothing for tomorrow. Danny called again yesterday. His voice rougher, impatient now. Mom, you're being dramatic. Families adjust. You need to stop acting like this is the end of the world. Maybe to him it isn't. To him, love justifies all. To him, complicated is a word to hide behind. To him, my refusal is the problem. But to me, it is the end of a world. Not the whole world, but of the one I'd built. The world of family dinners, Sunday lunches, holidays side by side with Linda as if we were sisters. All of it collapsed the day I saw her face in that car. And so I sit recording all of this because if I don't, then the silence wins, and silence has already stolen too much. I think often about dignity and how easily it slips away when you love too deeply, when you excuse too much. The truth is, I almost stayed quiet. I almost climbed into that car and smiled through my shame. I almost let them convince me my grief had made me confused, that my boundaries were outdated. But I didn't. I walked home. And in that lonely trudge, I realized something. They'd taken my laughter, my trust, yes. But they couldn't take the one thing I refused to give, my self-respect. Danny may believe love absolves all. Linda may tell herself we didn't choose it. But I choose this. I will not bless what is broken. And if history decides I am cold for that, so be it. Better cold than complicit. So here's my truth, whispered into tape at nearly 3 a.m. What do you call it when your son falls in love with his children's grandmother? Do you call it love? Or do you call it betrayal dressed as happiness? I don't have the answer. But I know which one lets me sleep tonight, even if the bed feels colder than ever. Some boundaries should never be crossed, even for love. Especially for love. This is Eleanor Brennan, widow, mother, still standing, still here, and I will not accept.